Most people don't think of themselves as lazy. If anything, they usually feel busy almost all the time. Their days are packed, their calendars look full, and there's always something that needs attention. Messages get answered quickly, notifications rarely pile up, and small tasks keep getting crossed off. From the outside, it looks like a full day of work. And most of the time, it feels like one too. But when the day finally slows down and there's nothing left demanding attention, there's often this quiet, uncomfortable sense that nothing important actually moved forward. Not because people didn't try, not because they didn't care. It happens because the human brain is very good at confusing activity with progress. Most days begin with good intentions. There's usually one task that matters more than the rest, something that feels a little uncomfortable to start. It might be a project that requires real thinking, a decision with no obvious right answer, or work whose results won't show up for weeks or months. That task sits there in the background, waiting, while easier things step forward almost immediately. An email comes in and feels quick to deal with. A message pops up and feels rude to ignore. A messy task list promises relief once it's cleaned up. None of these choices feel wrong. In fact, they feel responsible. The brain notices movement, completion, and order, and it quietly treats all of that as progress. What's easy to miss is that none of this actually moves the important work forward. It only creates the feeling that something useful is happening. The brain doesn't judge work by long-term impact. It judges work by signals. It looks for things that feel finished, things that give quick feedback, things that bring a sense of closure. Small tasks offer all of that almost instantly. Important work doesn't, at least not in the beginning. Important work is slow and uncertain. You can spend an hour on it and still feel like nothing happened. So without ever making a clear decision, the brain starts pushing it aside and replacing it with tasks that feel complete. That's why people don't really avoid work. They avoid unclear work. Work that doesn't reward them early gets postponed again and again, not out of laziness, but because the brain prefers clarity over uncertainty. A day shaped by this doesn't feel wrong while it's happening. Someone starts the morning by checking messages, just to make sure nothing urgent came in overnight. A few replies turn into a longer exchange, but staying responsive feels like the right thing to do. After that, they adjust their task list, moving things around so it feels more organized than it did yesterday. Before starting the main task, they decide to quickly clear a few small things first. An email gets answered. A file gets renamed. A document gets cleaned up. Each action feels harmless, even helpful. The list gets shorter, and that creates a quiet sense of relief. By the time they finally sit down to work on the task that actually matters, their energy is already lower. The task still feels unclear, so they tell themselves they'll come back to it after one more small thing. That one thing turns into another, and then another. The day fills up without any obvious mistake being made. Nothing went wrong. No time was wasted on purpose. Yet when the day ends, the task that mattered most is in the exact same place it was that morning. What makes this pattern dangerous is how reasonable it feels. At no point does it feel like procrastination. It feels like staying on top of things. It feels like being responsible. And that's exactly why it's so hard to notice while it's happening. Over time, this pattern starts training the brain. Every small task that gets finished reinforces the same message. This feels productive. This feels safe. This feels done. The brain doesn't ask whether the task mattered. It's only whether it ended cleanly. As this repeats, the brain becomes faster at spotting small, finishable tasks and slower to approach important ones. Important work starts to feel heavier, not because it's harder, but because the reward feels distant. Even starting begins to feel uncomfortable, especially on days when energy is already low. This is where ambitious people often struggle the most. Ambitious people care deeply about outcomes, which makes unclear progress especially frustrating. When results are hard to measure, staying busy becomes a way to feel effective. Activity slowly turns into a substitute for visible progress. That's why driven people can look extremely productive, while privately feeling stuck. They work long hours, respond quickly, and manage endless tasks. Yet the core work stays untouched. The effort is real. The exhaustion is real. But the progress isn't. This is also why many productivity systems fail to fix the problem. Better lists, cleaner schedules, and tighter organization improve the feeling of control without changing the behavior underneath. The brain keeps following the same signals, just with more structure supporting the illusion. Eventually, days start to feel full, but weeks feel empty. There's constant motion but no clear sense of direction. When that happens, people usually stop questioning the system and start questioning themselves. They assume they're undisciplined, unmotivated, or somehow broken. They're not. They're responding exactly the way a human brain does, when it's rewarded for closure and punished by uncertainty. Productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about noticing which actions actually move something forward and which ones simply feel good to complete. When the brain keeps rewarding the wrong actions, it will keep choosing them, even when the results never change. Busy people don't end the day with nothing done because they lack ambition or intelligence. They end the day that way because their brain has learned to trust the feeling of progress instead of real progress. That's the illusion. And once it settles in, it quietly shapes behavior every single day.